Advisory. Some episodes of the 1836 podcast are not intended for all audiences, due to details that might be considered disturbing. Listener and viewer discretion is advised.
On this special episode of the 1836 podcast, we hear from Miss Quintell Cole, who is celebrating her 99th birthday on the day of this recording.
Quintell Reynolds Cole. I never had a middle name. I always used a maiden name as R. I was born October 24th, 1925, Stratford, Oklahoma, which is in Garvin County. Oh, at home? Oh, my goodness, nobody could afford to go to a hospital back in 1925, for heaven's sakes. Oh, over at Ada, which was 16 miles east of there, or Chickasha, which was about 45 miles northwest of there. My father was a barber. My mother was one of the original enrollees in the Chickasaw Nation. Believed in Santa Claus. I believed whatever my father told me was the gospel truth. And I just thought Santa Claus really came up to the door and did what he was supposed to do. And that was a disappointment of my life, that was not true. Oh, yes, we had electricity, and we had a telephone. It was on a party line, but we had a telephone. And we were right in town. We had a garden, and we had a cow, and we fattened out a pig, and all of that sort of thing. It was not way out in the country. It was right in town. Oh, yes, and I have picked berries out of that berry patch lots of times. I had to go down during the lunch hour and go down to the pasture next door, across the road, and bring the cow in to be watered, and then take her back before I could go back to school at the end of lunch hour. Went to school all 12 years at Stratford. Yes, I played softball, and I ran on the track team, and I did broad jump and short deal, 50-mile deal. Well, we had a lot of things. We had an active church life, and I played the piano for the church for 5 years, and we had a lot of things going on. I always went to church all the time. I was not allowed to do much. I was not allowed to have boyfriends at all. And but then when I went to college, I met the young man I later married. He was in the Navy there at the university. And we got married after 3 years. And I went to New York City to get married, and then lived in Norfolk, Virginia the rest of the summer, and came back and finished the last year of my college while he was at sea. But I had 3 years of tennis at the University of Oklahoma while I was a student there. Went to school at the University of Oklahoma 4 years, business administration. Oh, we ate leftovers from lunch. We had our main meal at noon. And then when I got married, and I was a Navy wife for 18 years, and we always had the main meal in the evening. Well, I remember the Great Depression because that's when I grew up, and a nickel was worth a lot of money, and a dime was out of this world. And then when the war came along, that was when I was off in college. I went to college during the war. And I worked in the government department. I worked 22 hours a week as a secretary and I made $45 a month for those 22 hours a week. And I lived in a co-op dorm where everybody had to work an hour a day. And I learned that if you do a good job, you get the job from now on. So I cleaned the second floor bathrooms for 3 years. 1964, when Marvin retired from the Navy. We used to come, while he was still in the Navy, we'd come home once a year, and we watched the Norfolk Dam being built, and then we watched the Bull Shoals Dam being built. I never cared much about the White River. I had been to the Pacific Ocean, and I'd floated all of that out there, so White River never did excite me, because we lived on Guam for a year and a half. We moved here in '64 when he retired, and he wanted to go on to the university, so we bought this house and went back and forth from Fayetteville to here on weekends. And I worked in the animal science department at the university for 2 years while he was in school. And then we moved back here. And then I was asked to come and teach. And I taught for 7 years. And by that time, we had a surveying and engineering business. And I just couldn't handle all of it, so I had to give up teaching. Really enjoyed the teaching. The fact that I could help somebody. And back in those days, kids wanted to learn, and you had the respect of the parents more than you have today. And then most kids had two parents and were not living with grandmother or grandfather or something like that. So it was easy to communicate with children. I taught 5th, 6th, and 7th grade math particularly. And I enjoyed doing math because you can teach the key things that need to be learned and then embellish on that as they went into the next grade. We did the Razorback thing and both of our children are graduates of the University of Arkansas, and our husband too. They wanted him to stay up there and teach, but he wanted to come home. And we had 2 farms. We had one over Bruno and one out north of Yolo out there. Moved back there. And then I was in the Baptist church, and then when I went to college, I got acquainted with my husband, my later husband, and joined the Methodist church, and I've been part of the Methodist church ever since. In fact, I have done exercise for 30 years, 3 times a week, 3 days a week, an hour each time, and still do it. I don't do as well as I used to, but I think, and I've stayed active. I'm interested in the community, I'm interested in the state and the country, and I have friends, I have family, and that's what keeps you going. And I never had a problem with alcohol or cigarettes or anything like that. So I just kept going. And I have always liked people. And people would be nice to me. My mother was one of the original enrollees in the Chickasaw Nation. She was an 8th. Her mother was white, and her father was a big fat Indian who died about 40-something years old after fathering 16 children. And anyway, I guess 13 of those 16 children grew to adulthood, and they all married white people. It was interesting that way. They did not marry other Indians. and married into the whites. I never knew the difference. And, you didn't pay any attention. You just loved all of them and didn't worry about it. It's a sad situation. It's a sad situation. It really is. Well, for one thing, when somebody is nominated or selected to be a candidate for president, they should look more closely at who they recommend as vice president instead of just somebody who would get votes. And I've lived in Philadelphia, and I've lived in Florida, Texas, and California, Alaska, and Guam, and I knew people wherever we lived. And as a Navy wife, you learn to get along with people you really don't particularly like, but you get along with them. And I have always preached this to my children. Get along with whoever you are around, even if you don't agree with everything they do. Don't fuss at them about things. Don't argue. So I had relatives, my Indian relatives like to argue about things. My father's family liked to argue, so I said, no, we don't do that. I go to college, and I just said to keep going and do things the right way.